Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Elementary. So, a very interesting case this week where basically Sherlock ended up getting hired by the leader of a gang, played by, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, John Heredas. I know him as Javier Esposito from Castle, so it was pretty cool to see him. It was weird seeing him with all those tattoos on his face. I was like, kind of interesting when you consider, because he's like played a cop on Castles. Now he's in this episode of Elementary as kind of, playing the opposite side of the law. I just thought that was kind of interesting, because this is the first thing I've seen him in since Castle, so that was just kind of where my mind went. But nevertheless, he hires Sherlock because it's like, yo, one of my smugglers got killed, plus 3 of my guys. I want you to find out who did it. And the case gets very interesting because it turns out that basically the guy that died, the smuggler, his name is Ray. He basically had this lone connection. Like, basically, he had stolen from some North Korea. Like, basically, they were kind of the North Korean competition for this gang because they were also smuggling and drugs and stuff like that. And Ray basically stole from them. They were shipping something in a box. It turns out what was in that box was the Imperial Jade Seal, something extremely valuable. I like kind of how Sherlock kind of represented how much it was worth. It basically, in the past, an emperor, like, it was basically worth several cities. That's actually the title of the episode too, but it was like the worth of like 15 total cities, which is like mind-boggling. But trying to basically find out, that's what was stolen, who stole it. So whoever stole it most likely killed Ray, because for multiple things interesting. For one, basically you had Joan being confronted by both the Taiwanese, like some Taiwanese representatives coming to offer her $50 million for them to, because at the time she didn't know what it was that was in the box. Sherlock had figured it out, but she hadn't been told yet. They're like, okay, we'll give you $50 million, for you to possibly hand the box our way. She's like, what's in it? Can you tell me what's in it? Like, nope, we can't. We're eager to hear from you. What was also interesting is the fact is because they actually called Joan by her Chinese name, which kind of caught her off guard. She's like, okay, nobody calls me by my Chinese name except for my mom's. Like, who are you? To me, that's a little scary. The fact is that they knew her by her Chinese name. It means like they digged heavily into her. I mean, I don't know. Maybe on her birth certificate, it's, that's her Chinese name. I feel like, the fact that she goes by Joan Watson, I'm gonna assume it's like on her birth certificate. Like, maybe eventually, when she came, when she got old enough, maybe she changed her name on her birth certificate. I mean, that's how I kind of want. So, but the fact is, for them to know that means they kind of dig. I mean, if that ends up being the case, I feel like they kind of dug back in some records. And also, met this girl named Wendy. Basically, her dad was some Chinese official or whatever, and was also offering. Basically, she was there. She's like, yeah, my dad said, like, passing along this message that basically China has more money than Taiwan. That essentially saying we can pay more than them, because basically Joan turned down the 50 million before, and Sherlock was kind of like, oh, it's okay. So we now know that your price is above 50 million. And then she was talking about the fact is that the Chinese would offer them about 100 million or something like that. And Sherlock was like, okay, so now we've also found out your price. So, but what I also liked about the situation is that basically, Sherlock wanted the name of a certain drug dealer who's basically selling some very like heavy grade like heroin that ended up killing someone from his support group, because he kept saying like a friend of his died. I was like, who? Like that would like that never came up. It seemed like if it was something like that, you would think it'd be like, okay, they'd make a bigger deal out of it. But it was like, no, it's kind of like a very small side story to the episode. That just kind of blew my mind, because he kept saying like a friend. I was like, oh, is it someone we know? And maybe it was that someone we met in the past, because it was someone from his meetings, but it was just he referred to this lady from his meetings, and I don't know whether it was someone we've met in the past, or was it just kind of like a no-name character that you've never actually met before, but it's just kind of like, yeah, she quote-unquote exists. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. So, because I kept wondering the entire time, I was like, okay, I was like, there was definitely no episode last week, so did I miss something? I don't remember that coming up the first episode, so it just kind of, I guess kind of, it played a part in the episode when he was threatening that Vax guy. It was like, okay, this is what they do to people who kind of basically screwed him over. This is what could happen to you. But I love how basically Sherlock ended up having to tell her, it's like, I kind of forgot to mention to you that it's not just my life on the line, it's also yours, because they're threatening not to just come after me, but also you, because we're a package deal. And Joan was like, wait, what? It's like, it's one thing that they're going to kill you, as wanting to kill you, but it's another thing too to add me to it as well. I mean, she didn't really go that far, but you could tell with her tone of like, wait, what? Kind of said it all. But what was very fascinating about, I mean, we ended up getting like the other side of finding out what happened. That basically Ray ended up stealing it from some guy who was going to run a museum or whatever. He basically originally played for the Jade, and these Korean smugglers smuggled it in, but then Ray stole it, and it wasn't this museum guy that killed him, it was just this Vax guy who originally got it from Ray because of the auction, killed Ray to get it, got it, but basically had one of his guys, kind of his head of security, kill the museum guy to leave it there, because apparently, and I was very fascinated, apparently there's an act or whatever that basically any Chinese artifacts found here in the U.S. after 2009 will automatically be shipped over to China, which is, I thought that was very fascinating. So basically, the plan was that's why he left the murder, because I was wondering, like, okay, all this trouble for it, and it's like nobody. You left it there, you killed a guy with it and left it there. I was like, okay, so either it's not really the Jade, which the way the episode progressed makes you think, makes it points out is, I know it's most definitely the Jade, the Imperial Jade Seal, but it's like, I was like, why would you leave it though? Because like it being a fake could be the only reason, but it's like, no, because of that act, it's kind of like, oh, that way he can ship it off, because if he had it in his possession, Sherlock was already sniffing around him, so that meant, the police might come sniffing around, they find it on him, it basically makes everything implode. Because apparently the guy was going bankrupt. Basically, because Sherlock kind of got a meeting with him by, bringing up all those different people he had killed, like all these miners that had died in an accident that basically was because of his negligence, and was basically outside on a basically yelling out all the names of the people that died, as well as talking about the fact that he had a list of all the different people, political people that kind of backed him, that had their own faults to play in it too, and threatened to kind of throw their names out there. So they ended up having their meeting. But essentially, that whole mine collapse situation ended up causing some landslide issues. Basically, some water got polluted. So basically, he's going to pay like a crap ton of money to fix that, because he's responsible for it. So the Jade was kind of his way of getting around it. Basically, made a deal with the Chinese government. Basically, him leaving it there because of the whole act and everything. Even though it'll be sent by the government, they'll know like, oh, we have you to thank. So it was a quote unquote legitimate deal, but he still went about it very shaded way. But, once again, kind of tying back into it, Sherlock used the fact is that he's connected to the gang dudes, being like, yeah, this is what they did, to the guy that Sherlock was trying to find, which Sherlock didn't want him to do that to him, didn't want him to kill the guy, just wanted to find him. And, because really that leaves everything open, because it's like, yeah, he might have been selling it, but that doesn't mean he was kind of like the dude producing it, or excuse me, or, he was kind of the top guy running the situation. He could have easily been like a bottom feeder in the whole hierarchy. So him being killed wasn't a good thing, because Sherlock wanted to kind of interrogate him, get a little bit of information from him. So the fact is that they did outright kill him without Sherlock knowing anything. Because like I said, it seems like such a thin storyline element, but I'm guessing they're going to bring that back, because Sherlock's going to investigate some stuff and end up finding out that that particular strain of heroin is still on the streets. So he's got to find the people responsible, try and take them down, essentially. But basically the Vax dude ended up choosing, he's like, I'd rather, with Sherlock kind of threatening him like that, he was like, I basically chose prison over that. So that was the main case of the episode. There was kind of another side story to this episode, and that's basically Shinwell, Joan is helping him out, got him a new place. For Shinwell, it's a little rundown and everything, but it's better. It's not a halfway house, because, I guess, it being a halfway house makes him feel like, it's like, yes, I'm an ex-con and whatever, but it's like, I guess a halfway house is just kind of a constant reminder of your past. And even though the landlord knows about his past, it still makes things a little easier, because it's still like not, it's not a halfway house. It's kind of like, it is kind of like a fresh start for him. It's like, yes, my past is still there and I'm aware of it. The landlord's aware of it, but, it's still kind of a, I don't know how to really phrase it. It's like, it's kind of in a metaphorical sense, a halfway house would be kind of like a prison because it's a constant reminder of being locked away, of, reminded of all the things you do. But now he kind of gets a little leeway with it, I guess. That's the best way I can kind of put it. But essentially, in this episode, he told Joan that he was looking for his daughter, Siobhan, and that basically, basically her mom died a couple years ago. She's on her own. Shinwell wrote to her, but the letters kind of got sent back after a while. And so he just wanted her to help him find her, and Joan did. She ended up tracking down the relative that Siobhan was living with and talked to her a little bit, but the relative was like, no, Shinwell's not coming into her life. Basically, essentially saying that Shinwell can pretend all he wants. It's like, oh yeah, you might be convinced that he's getting better, but the fact of the matter is, I know he's not. He's a killer. He's a drug dealer. He's a terrible person. Everything, like, Siobhan has been doing great. After everything that she's been through, losing her mom, just being in the situation she's in, she's prospering and she's doing well, and she doesn't want to ruin that for her by bringing her dad back into the picture. And essentially breaking it down, saying like Shinwell only cares about himself. For him, she didn't outright say it, but it seems like for her, she's kind of making it seem like all he wants is control. Like he wants power over things. So it's kind of like he wants something, he'll get it. And that's all he really cares about, is holding on to what he thinks is his. Because Sherlock kind of alluded to, it's not directly in the same sense that this relative was, but basically saying like Shinwell was a lieutenant in a very powerful gang. He was in a very powerful position, had a lot of power, had a lot of money, and now he's in a position where he has none of that. So that basically, in some shape or form, he's trying to hold on to, anything, kind of symbolizing that power, reaching for it if he can. So it's not easy to adjust to this life, because essentially, once you've tasted power, it's not easy to completely give it up. Even when it's taken from you, you'll do anything to kind of get it back. So this all kind of coincides with what I kind of brought up last episode, because we saw the whole gun situation in the episode. It's like, I don't know whether that's whether that's for protection, or is that just because he got mixed up in something again. So I don't know. I did, because it kind of, the relative even said it to Joan. It's like, it's not just Siobhan that that he can end up hurting. Basically, warning Joan, being like, basically being around him could harm you too. So I don't know. Like, I mean, we still don't really got a clear picture of who Shinwell is. I mean, because it does seem like he is better. I don't know, because he actually tracked her down, because basically one of his associates, when he got out, he had a lot of people searching. One of them panned out, and he found out she's on the soccer team, that she's good at sports, she's good at school. And basically, he wants to talk to her. Every fiber of his being wants to, but he tells himself no. He tells Joan, like, I can't. I got to get my life back together first. Because Joan was telling him it's not going to be the easiest thing. It's going to hurt a little bit, getting your life back in order. But it's going to take time. You got to be patient. So I don't know. Because multiple things come up when it comes to Shinwell. It's like, why is it that Joan takes so much of an interest in him? He's not the only other person she's ever helped in the past, like when it came to being a surgeon. So why does she take such an interest in him? I guess it's like, she does want to help people. And it's like, that's kind of why she teamed up with Sherlock in the beginning, because she wanted to help him, first as a sober companion, and now as a consultant, she wants to help him do his job. So maybe she sees an opportunity, and it's just like, yeah, here's someone that needs help, someone that I know that, I can use my position, I can use what I've learned, my connections and stuff to help him out, essentially. So, but like I said, I'm still very suspicious of Shinwell, because it's like, that whole gun situation in the first episode makes him suspicious, but this episode makes it, that aspect of him being like, no, I need to get myself straight first, makes it seem like, okay, he is taking this seriously. He is trying to do his best. But at the same time, it kind of, what that relative says does kind of have me worried. It's like, essentially, a tiger can't change its, well, a zebra, let's use a zebra as an example. A zebra can't change its stripes. Shinwell's a bad person. She makes it seem like Shinwell was always a bad person, is a bad person, and always will be. So I'm very curious to see like what they do with his character, because he doesn't seem like just kind of like a one-off character. He seems like a character we'll probably be seeing pretty frequently throughout the season, especially because Joan's trying to help him get his life back in order. So I hope that doesn't come back to bite Joan in the ass, but I get the feeling it's going to. In what shape or form, I don't know. We'll just have to wait to find out. Really quick note, very interesting thing. Like I kind of skimmed over it earlier. That whole Vax guy having basically a restraining order ready for Sherlock and Joan. He basically had that prepared like 2 years ago from when Sherlock was possibly investigating him, and he kept him around, but kind of kept him buried. And then when he found out Sherlock was trying to meet with him, he had him pulled up again. So that was kind of interesting. It's like he was always ready for the eventuality that Sherlock might come after him again, and that's gonna be kind of interesting, like going forward, because it makes you wonder, like, how many other bad guys are like that? Because there are some kind of one-off bad guys that Sherlock kind of crosses paths with that don't necessarily get, justice. Like, they don't get punished for the stuff they do just because they're in a position where, like, they cover their tracks pretty well, they pay off the right people, stuff like that. That I'm wondering, like, how many of them are kind of in a situation, because there are some cases where it's people in the past, like in future seasons, like, Sherlock does cross paths with them again. So I'm curious, are going to be any like that this season, where it's just kind of like, oh yeah, we remember you, Sherlock. We prepared for this eventuality or something. It's just something interesting that I just wanted to tack that on, just because I find that so fascinating. Because even they were shocked by it. It's like, even Sherlock was like, I gotta give him his props for, like, the fact is he had this prepared 2 years ago and he didn't let go of it. He could have easily just destroyed it, but he kept it around just in case that eventuality. So, I mean, granted, in the long run, when you look at the way the episode played out, obviously it didn't help him. So, but now, really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.